Hi, my name's Elizabeth Yari, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about night owl food forest and the water retention features that are placed there. I took a permaculture and a biodynamic course, and the teachers of the course said, Elizabeth, if you want to make a food forest, come to Paonia, Colorado. We do that around here. And so I did. So 5 years ago, I came to Paonia, Colorado, and I looked around and I realized I'd not only left my family, my career, my home, and friends. I'd also left 40 inches of rain a year. So I had come to the dry, arid desert part of Paonia and bought 5.5 acres of land at an altitude of almost 6,000 feet in the watershed of the West Elks. And historically, 100 million years ago, there was an inland sea in this area. And when it receded, it left these adobe, muddy hills. And when I came here, I looked at these adobe, muddy hills, and I thought, you know what, anything's possible. Anything's possible. There were beautiful mountains now behind it. And I thought, I'm going to buy this piece of land, 5.5 acres of adobe clay, with just sagebrush, rabbit brush, greasewood. So I immediately, after I bought the land, I immediately named it Night Owl Food Forest. Got to know the neighbors and collected kitchen scraps for compost. So the first 2 years I observed the land, and that first year I observed just 6.5 inches of water a year. And what I was interested in is watching where the water went when it hit the land. And this is rainfall and snowmelt. And what I noticed is that it collected in the animal hoof prints. That was a good place to put seeds, so I put a few seeds there. I noticed it collected in any dimple that was on the ground. And so I thought, well, that would be a good place to put a tree. You know, it holds the water. But other than that, the water seemed to just run off the land and run down the road and then run into the ditch. So then I was interested about how does a passage of water cause vegetation to grow? Meaning what natural features other than dimples and hoof prints hold and slow sink and spread the water on the land. And I noticed that it was wood, that it was trees, plants. They retain the water, they take the water. That didn't have any trees, but the plants, I noticed, they take up the water into their bodies and then they distribute it as vapor through their leaves. I also observed the larger water cycle. So maybe let's go to the map for that. So I don't have these features in here, but just imagine that the sea, the ocean, is way over here. And water comes, evaporates from the ocean and comes up in the clouds and over to the mountains, Mount Lambourne and Lanzender over here. And precipitation happens on the mountains. The water goes into either underground aquifers. Over here we have 5. Or it goes, it travels down the mountains, and then we have these reservoirs and ditches where the water is distributed to farms, and that's our irrigation system. And so the irrigation system that I have starts on the opposite hill to this hill, and the pipe goes underground, and then it goes, because this hill is higher than this hill, it goes by gravity underground up here, and it comes out roughly actually over here where the deer is. And I do have half a share of irrigation. Half a share is like Tuesday afternoon. That's not a lot of water to water 5.5 acres. That's why I have to rely on water from the sky and slowing, sinking, and spread the water that I do have in the irrigation pipe. So I have irrigation coming down to these terraces over here, and I'll explain this blue coloring. Well, I needed to plant a food forest, so I thought, let's make it a 7-layered food forest. And what is a 7-layered food forest? The first layer are the tall canopy trees, such as nut trees, and the second layer sub-canopy trees, like apples, and the third layer are the shrubs. I have chokeberry and many others. And then the fourth layer is the herbaceous layer, which also include the medicinals and perennial vegetables. And then the fifth layer are the roots, and I have turnips. The sixth layer is the ground cover, which in my case is cover crop. And the seventh layer is the vine layer, which spirals up the tall canopy trees. And of course, a food forest is not just for humans, but it's for the animals, the birds, the insects, and the microorganisms. And that's what I set out to plant. So in order to slow, sink, and spread the water on the land, it needed to have some flat surfaces. That's where water can collect. Flat surfaces and slightly tilted surfaces and wavy surfaces. So also I was thinking it probably needs to be stuffed with something that is going to hold the water in the land. And I know with 6.5 inches of rainwater a year in Colorado, hugel beds may or may not be a good idea. Hugel beds were created in Germany. Hugel is hill in German, and it's actually called Hugelkultur. So it's basically a trench in the ground, about 4 feet wide, 3 feet deep, and it's stuffed with rotten wood, like stumps, wood that you just don't need anymore. And any debris from the ground, like twigs and sticks, prunings, you put that in with it and you water that layer. And the water inside the rotting wood causes the rotting wood to swell. There are still cells inside rotten wood and they swell. And then you put in manure. So that can be chicken, horse, cow, goat. I had goat. And then you can put in compost, and then you can put back in the soil or the clay and a few amendments until you actually have a hill on top of the trench. And you can plant, by the side of the hill, you can plant trees. And on top of the hill, you can plant, say, flowers or vegetables. Hugel beds is one idea, and then terracing is another idea. And I thought, why not combine the two? Let's make a hugel bed terrace. And then let's make some dimples, and let's make some check dams, and let's make some infiltration basins and a collection basin, and some swales and some berms. And I think that was it. Yeah. So I just want to explain that the hugel bed was created here, and it's soaked all the time. I've actually had access to more than Tuesday afternoon of irrigation, so I've been able to keep this completely soaked. And then the irrigation water goes down to these terraces, which are on contour. They collect the water, and I've been able to plant this side of them. And this here is mulch, and this is cover crop, both water retention features. And this here is a check dam terrace. So the water collects here and then runs off over the berm in the road into this terrace, and I'll explain this terrace in a minute. This road has been built at an angle where it tilts into the hill, and when the snow or the rain come down this edge of it, they go into over the berm and into this terrace here. And there's another berm here, and it goes into this terrace here. So these are the dimples that were made. These are half moon shape on contour, and they're connected. And they basically hold water and then let it go. Hold water, let it go. And as it lets it go, it goes through these tiny channels, and the water turns, and it purifies itself, it cleans itself, it brings in microorganisms from the air, and it brings in fungal spores and all kinds of things. So it's like churning as it goes down. And it goes into this spillway here. I'm so grateful to have received the LOR grant for this structure here. This is a retention basin, and it holds the water that comes down from the irrigation pipe, and then it sends it over at an angle of 2% into a spillway all the way through this terrace. And this terrace here has a hugel bed inside it. There's a trench inside here. It has all the cottonwoods and the manure and the sticks and the amendments and everything inside there. And the water just passes by and infiltrates that too, and then goes over a spillway into another hugel bed terrace, and all the way over to a spillway, and then this is a swale. It's on flatter land, and then it comes into an infiltration basin, and the water just gradually infiltrates this hill here, this little tiny hill, and then it comes out of there and flows under a culvert and into this swale, around the eye, and around into another swale, into another collection basin here, an infiltration basin, and out into the ditch. And then it goes all the way down to another ditch, and then into the North Fork of the Gunnison River, and then into the Gunnison River, and into the Colorado River, and then all the way down to the ocean, and back to our beginning over here. And for this job, I hired Trace Axtell and Marta Sanchez from Integral Pathways to do all this work with machinery. Part of the LOR grant was to also bury dead animals and honor their lives with trees. And these are holes here where I buried, this one here is a chicken, and this is my friend's dog, Dolly. And they've both been honored with trees, and their dead bodies will give back to the earth, and it's absolutely perfect compost. Before this project was started, when this was just a blank hill here and here, I convened the neighbors from upstream and downstream and to the side of the streams to involve them in the project, because anything I do on my land will affect them, and I wanted us all to benefit from the water collection. Before we started any of the machine work, Trace, Marta, and Trace's dog Rosie and we met for a small ceremony to warn the animals, the insects, the microorganisms that destructive work was about to take place. And we encouraged them to find alternative lodging, alternative places to be while we did this work. We didn't want to disturb their territory in any way. And after the work was completed, we had another little ceremony to welcome them all back to the place. LOR Foundation suggested that I look into zero footprint grant, and that would be for carbon sequestration. In other words, for me, planting trees and shrubs in these earthworks now. And I did obtain the grant, and I planted 1,000 trees and bushes in and around these earthworks. And I look forward to the time when I can take people through the terraces and through the dimples, and that they will be able to savor some of these trees, the fruits of these trees, the berries, the root crops, and for us to have a feast, one grand feast at harvest time. Night Owl Food Forest is a process. And it's my legacy to the future generations, my children, their children. And in 100 years' time, this is going to be a mature food forest, a dream of mine since the age of 60.
Google bed.
A Google bed.
That's a Google bed.
Yep. Google bed.
Google bed.
A Google bed.
Google bed.
A Google bed.